it's very hard for you to build a home within when you've been taught that self-love is selfish, or that you don't have the right to question certain beliefs or certain values or certain norms or certain ways that things should be. Because the whole idea of having a home within is that you become for yourself the emotional safety that you seek in others.
Welcome to another episode of Yalla Let's Talk. Today we have with us no other than Najwa Zebian. Najwa is a Lebanese-Canadian activist, author, speaker, and educator. Her passion for language was evident from a young age as she delved into Arabic poetry and novels. The search for a home, what Najwa describes as a place where the soul and heart feel at peace, was central to her early years. When she arrived in Canada at the age of 16, she felt unstable and adrift in an unfamiliar place. Najwa has a bachelor's in education, master's in education, and a doctorate in educational leadership. Najwa's unique journey of breaking out of the mold that society and culture suffocated her with has been an inspiration to millions worldwide. Through her 5 books, her podcast, Stories of the Soul, and her own digital school, Soul Academy, she continues to give a voice to countless souls out there aching to be heard.
Thank you for having me.
Najwa, I want to just start right from the beginning. What actually inspired you to start writing and writing about heartache?
What initially inspired me to start writing was my own struggle with feeling like I didn't fit in or belong. I was very young. I was 13. I was bullied in school. I never really had a group of friends. It was always, I was the one who was always picked on. I was the youngest in my class every year because my parents put me in school very early. I was made to feel like I was too sensitive and like a good girl. So, I never really got in trouble. So everybody would get upset with me for being the one who's like best well-mannered. And so I just never really felt like anyone really understood me. And at the time, my parents were traveling quite a bit between Lebanon and Canada, and I lived with different relatives. And so I never really felt like I had that stability of a home to go to, a safe place where I can say, this happened today at school, or somebody said this to me, or a teacher did this or that. I never felt like I had that. So writing was my cry for help, but it wasn't a cry for help from anyone. It was from myself because that's all I had. So that's what began the journey. And then I moved to Canada at 16. My whole family had been here at the time and just felt like this place, even though I'd been to Canada many times, it was far away from all the places I'd known and felt comfortable in. And everybody's speaking English now everywhere you go. And yes, I spoke fluent English. No one could tell that I was from a different country, but it just felt like I was in a brand new place that I didn't want to be in. So feeling that and feeling helpless, because as a 16-year-old, there's not much you could do. I felt like feeling the pain was too much. So when I would write, I would feel a sense of relief because I was talking about what was on my mind and what was hurting my heart, and that feeling of not really fitting in or belonging in this country that I'm in, or in the school that I just enrolled in, and that I had no friends. But that wasn't where the writing stopped. It took me to a place where I'm like, okay, so what now? What can I do about this? And I'm 16. There is nothing I can do about this. So it was the realization of helplessness and hopelessness that put me in a place where I was like, I just don't want to feel this pain anymore. So you know what? I'm going to rip up my journal, and I just don't want to feel this anymore. And I stopped writing. And I always say this in all my interviews, for the next 6 or 7 years, life, when I think back to it, it was in black and white, because there wasn't really pure happiness or pure sadness, or I was just in the middle. I was numbing everything. I just went with what my parents said I needed to do and what society said I needed to do, but I wasn't really leading my life. I was leading a life that led me to a place where I would be described as a good girl, as a good daughter, a good friend, a good listener. And really, I was just a people pleaser. I just never really had the courage to step out of that bubble that I was in, where I'm like, I just want to be safe and protected. I'm not going to take any risks. I'm already in pain. I just don't want more pain. So the return to writing happened when I started teaching a group of Libyan refugees. There were 8 of them. It was my first year of teaching. The principal walked in and said, these kids are your responsibility from now till the end of the school year. And I'll never forget that moment. I remember exactly where we were, which hall, which location, in front of what door, and the look those kids had on their faces reminded me of the look I knew I had on my face when I was 16, when I first came here. Like, what am I doing here? And, you go from a life where you're used to education being a certain way, and especially if you're a high achiever, and now you're in a new place where for them there was the language barrier. They felt like they were less than, but they used to do so well back home. And so I was their cheerleader, their motivator, their voice for that whole year. And so by helping them heal and helping them keep that voice instead of going for years and then later having to find it again, I helped myself speak up for that 16-year-old and do all the healing work that I needed to do, not just from 16 years old on, but for everything else as well. Because when you grow up into an adult, you look back at yourself when you were a child and you think, wow, I really was carrying the weight of the world at that age. And I wish I could go back to that little me and like give her a hug and say, none of these stories that you're believing about yourself are true. So that's the story.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful story, first and foremost. And you've mentioned a few things that I think is so relatable to a lot of people who are going to be listening to this. Is that cultural expectation to be, like in your words, like a good daughter and this good girl and being a people pleaser. And I just want to dive more into that. How do you feel these experiences and this cultural expectation impacts your understanding of a home within?
It's very hard for you to build a home within when you've been taught that self-love is selfish, or that you don't have the right to question certain beliefs or certain values or certain norms or certain ways that things should be. Because the whole idea of having a home within is that you become for yourself the emotional safety that you seek in others. And we grow up believing that as long as I please my parents, as long as I please my religion, my culture, that's all the safety I need. Any other safety outside of that doesn't feel safe. But you are basing your worthiness of being respected and loved and cared for and looked at as a good person on things that are outside of you. So there's that conflict. Do I follow what everyone around me, what culture, what religion, what family, what even government, do I follow what they tell me makes me a good person or a good citizen or a good daughter or a good Muslim woman or man or a good whatever the culture is? Or do I give myself permission to ask myself, what does it mean to me to be a good person? Do I really believe in that rule or in that cultural norm? Or I'll give you an example, because I know it's easier when you give examples. So marriage in our culture, I grew up around an environment of people where the messaging I would hear is you need to get married young, especially as a woman, because the older you get, the more value you lose. So the less value you have. And that's so toxic, and it's so dangerous to teach our girls that, because what ends up happening is that they will see that as an emblem of success in life. And so I need to reach there. So when I was in grade 11 in Lebanon, that was my last year there. So when I came to Canada in grade 12, I kid you not, within 2-3 years, every single girl that was in my class in Lebanon was either married or engaged, except for one. And that was it. And now I'm 32 years old. I'm not engaged. I'm not married. And if I had continued to believe that that makes me less than, then all of the things I've done in my life, I would view them as, well, that's, that's nothing compared to the fact that I'm not married yet. And you hear that messaging from, I'm sure you've heard it. Like you'll hear older women talk like this and men saying like, "What? Okay, so you did all of that. But at the end of the day, like you're going to be in the kitchen with your kids." And you hear that and you don't really think too much of it because you're so exposed to it. And then once you really give yourself permission to sit down and think about it, you're like, that is not the way I want to live. That's not what I subscribe to. And so to build a home within yourself, that comes on a foundation of self-acceptance and self-awareness. So if the self that you're accepting is based on the acceptance of your surroundings and your environment, that's not self-acceptance. That's acceptance of a version of you that you've altered to be looked at as worthy. So you say, if they accept me, then I accept myself. But you're not really accepting yourself. You're accepting what they accept. And what that means, if you can visualize it, think of yourself as a light. Like think of your silhouette as a light, and you're like dimming this light here and this light here. And you're a fraction of who you are to be accepted by them. And you're like, that's more important to me than just me fully accepting myself. Because you know what happens when you don't care about others accepting you is you have to actually deal with the guilt that they put you through, with the shame that they put you through, with the put downs and let downs and calling you names and describing you as a rebellious person or a bad person, or like just shaming you religiously or culturally, and or calling you names like, I get many people say like, oh, your parents must be so proud. And they'll say it with a way like they're trying to insult me, as if I'm not a reason for my parents to be proud of me. And it's like, why would you say something like that?
And is that because they perceive you that you're not married? Is that the reason? Or why would they?
No, man, that was just an example.
Yeah.
The marriage thing was just an example. But for me, it's the way I dress. It's the way the openness with which I talk about certain topics like love and relationships, and just the changes I've made in my life. Like, I used to wear the hijab. I don't wear it anymore. And that was a personal decision that I made. And there are still people to this day who will like leave comments that are intended to really hurt me. Yeah.
And what I appreciate with a lot of the things you said, a lot of what self-acceptance and going through that journey is really starting to detach yourself from what others think.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people can relate to that. We grow up in a culture that's very shame-based, that we are an extension of our society, an extension of our family. And if we deviate from the norm, then people look at us like, whoa, like you're a rebel. Like, what are you doing? Yeah. And whatever you decide to do, whatever narrative you have, they're just going to see it in the rebellious way.
Yes.
And you were able to break those barriers and break that narrative and change that narrative for yourself. I want to know, what practical advice do you have for someone who might be in that state where they still feel so much pressure from society to adhere to, like they have to get married at a certain age or do this or do that and all of that kind of stuff?
There's so much that I would say, but the first thing that comes to mind is, at the end of the day, this is your life. You are the one who in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, you're the one who's going to look back and say, I wish I did that. I wish I didn't do that. I wish I stood up for myself there. I wish I lived my life the way I wanted to live my life. I wish that I didn't succumb to the pressure or pressures that were on me to live a certain way or be a certain way or look a certain way or speak a certain way. And you have to not live your life in a way where you're leading a path towards regret. And as long as you're living your life for others and in a way that's controlled by others and what they think of you or what they would think of you if you were to make a certain decision for yourself, as long as you're doing that, you are headed towards regret because you're living a life that's not your own. You're walking a path that's not your own. And you think it's safe because you know if I please this person or this societal expectation or cultural expectation or religious expectation, then I'm guaranteed safety. I'm guaranteed to be looked at as enough through their eyes. But again, going back to the concept of building a home within, when you build your home in other people or anything outside of you, you give that thing or that person the power to make you homeless. As in, you'll only feel welcomed and invited in and accepted as long as you follow what this person or this thing wants of you. So what about you? What about what you think of you? What about you telling yourself when you go through a difficult time, I know this is hard. You're going to be okay. You are enough. I know this person isn't pleased with a decision that you made for yourself, but you made this decision because this is what you want. So if somebody really wants your best interest, are they going to stand up against you and shame you and make you feel like something's wrong with you for making a decision for yourself? Or would they tell you, listen, I understand that you think this is the best decision for you. From my experience, it's not. However, I will love you regardless. I will be by your side. You are experimenting. You are risking things. You're doing things for yourself that I've never done for myself. I hope that they lead you to the place that you want to be in, but I'm not going to shame you in the process so that you could go back on your decision just so that you could get my approval. Like there's a difference there because I get this a lot, especially from people who give advice on religion. They'll say things like, well, it's my duty to tell you that what you're doing is wrong. Like God asked me to do this. And one time I responded to someone. I try to be very kind and to not respond like with any negativity because I don't stand for that. But at one point I just got so fed up and I responded to someone and I said, did God DM you or something? Show me that DM because what do you mean? Where did God tell you that you're supposed to tell me how to live my life? Because I think my relationship with God is between me and God. Mm-hmm. So there is that but it's our job to tell you this, or it's our job. Like I have many people message me saying like, my parents are telling me that if they let me do this, then they are bad parents and I'm carrying the guilt and shame for how they're going to feel about themselves. And so that's, you're guilting someone into living their life a certain way so that you could feel better about yourself or so that you don't experience a certain shame that's really beneath the surface. Mm-hmm. But you're telling your children it's on you that I don't feel this.
What's interesting, what you mentioned, is that all these people are using religion as a weapon to try to impose their values onto you. And at the end of the day, a lot of what we see and what we observe is just society and just trying to impose their cultural norms. The first time we've ever done a Yalla Let's Talk Cafe, and this was back in like 2018, we had a sit-down conversation with a lot of different people. And I still remember this analogy. One person just was looking at us and he's like, as Arabs and Middle Eastern folks, we are like a chain. We are all connected. When one person does something, that impacts the whole entire chain. And a lot of people were nodding and like, yes, and they agree. And at that time, I'm like, oh wow, that's an interesting way of looking at it. But after a couple of years reflecting on it, that is so toxic.
It is.
Because it's this idea that you can't be your own person.
Exactly.
And it actually contradicts this idea of you creating a home within.
Yes. You've always been your own home, but it's a home that you've never lived in. It's a home that you were never aware of. You were always taught that to be enough, to be okay, to be safe, you had to seek acceptance and approval and validation from others. So the road towards yourself is going to be a long one because you've been conditioned to always walk away from yourself for relief and acceptance and approval. And now you're like, oh, I actually have a say about who I am and what I want and how enough I am and how worthy I am and how I want my life to go. When you just start even thinking about that, you start feeling like you're selfish and you start feeling like you listen to messages like that, like we're all part of a chain. And if you do something, then you're affecting everybody and you carry that responsibility and the guilt so your journey back to yourself is going to be riddled with you challenging everything that you've been taught before about yourself and about the world. And as long as you keep telling yourself, I trust myself on this journey back to myself. And you know what? If I make mistakes, I'm a human being. I'm not meant to be perfect. And if I make mistakes, I will do what I can to make sure that I fix them or I learned from them or whatever. But at the end of the day, as long as I'm on my journey to myself, to living my life wholly and authentically as I am, there is no wrong answer when it comes to that. You're not headed towards the wrong place. You're headed towards the right place. So I would encourage anybody who is in that place where they are feeling pressured to live their life a certain way, or they're feeling like they're a bad person for making decisions for themselves, to just always remember, is this something that you are doing genuinely for yourself, or are you doing it in spite of someone, or are you doing it to prove yourself to someone, or are you doing it because maybe you're going against the pressure, say from your family and your culture, but maybe you're falling for the pressure of your friends. Like, that's also not an answer to say, well, I'm going to rebel against my parents and my culture and I'm going to follow what my friends have to tell me. Make sure that as long as the decisions and the introspection is coming from you, not from an external source, if it feels wrong, it's because your whole life you've been conditioned to think a certain way and believe a certain way and feel a certain way. It's going to feel wrong. But it's right for you. It's wrong for the way that you have been living. So yeah, make that change in perspective.
Beautifully said. And I like the fact that you mentioned it's not just like, look at what your family is and rebelling against them, also your friends as well. And it's
absolutely.
And I think that's where a lot of us may make that mistake. It's like, okay, what my friends are doing is the right thing, but it's really just what you're doing and it's within. And I want to just now transition this conversation into your new book.
Yay.
Trust Your Heart.
Yes.
And I had a chance to read some of the book, and there was a passage that I want to start off with and just ask you more about.
Okay.
Because it genuinely resonated with me, and I feel like it may resonate with a lot of people in our generation. So the passage from Trust Your Heart. So many of us, once we are heartbroken, decide, never again, never again will I put myself in a position to be hurt in this way. The truth is, it's stemming from a part of you that wants to make sure you never experience this kind of pain again. Rather, it needs to be seen and validated by you. It needs to be held by you, heard by you, and understood by you. Wow. Like when I read that like multiple times, and And I want to just ask you, how were you able to validate and accept those feelings?
The feelings of being heartbroken, the feelings of being rejected, the feelings of being made to feel like you're not good enough for someone, or they changed in some way that makes you question, like, how did you love me before but you don't love me anymore? What you do when something like that happens is immediately you want to feel better. So you want to snap out of it and not feel, because feeling is considered like weakness. Like all the dating advice that you hear, most of it will tell you, you know, they never deserved you, and like get up and remember who you are. And it's true, you're supposed to remember who you are. But before that, you have to be willing to sit with your emotions. You have to be willing to sit with the experience and say, okay, what were some of the red flags that I knew in the moment were red flags? I had a gut feeling, but I allowed my wanting for this relationship to continue to override that gut feeling and say, you know, it's fine. It's just a one-off. You need to sit with the experience and ask yourself, was this something that was actually right for me? Was I in this relationship for the right reasons, or did I just want to feel loved by someone? Was this person compatible with me and who I am becoming? And is their vision of the future the same as the vision that I have for my future as well? So you need to sit and really think of those things and really feel the emotions, because if you don't, all you're doing is you're burying them somewhere, and they're going to pop up in your next relationship or in the next time that you feel rejected or something doesn't work out. So I used to always say, you know, after a relationship ends, you need to just, you know, be protective of yourself and move forward without thinking from your ego, as in like, you know, I'm better than them and they never deserved me anyway. That's not going to get you anywhere. Like it's a beautiful thing to say, you know, I really did love that person. I really saw a future with them. I really thought that they were the person I was going to spend the rest of my life with, but it didn't work out. So you look at that message that you tell yourself, and maybe you end it with saying, and it really hurts that it didn't work out. So what if it hurts? Yeah, that's a human thing. Like the fact that it hurts, it means that they meant something to you. It means that you actually worked hard for something. It means that you allowed yourself to be vulnerable and to invest in someone without having 100% guarantee of where it was going. That's beautiful. So you can admit that to yourself and say, you know, go for a period of time where you're like, I just never again. I'm never again going to put myself in a position where I'm vulnerable or where I open up to someone, or, you know, I'm going to follow the dating advice that says like, let them chase you and never really show your true cards or true colors, or just keep people at a distance because that's the safest way. You might say that moving forward, even after you've admitted to yourself that it hurts and whatever. So that part of you that's saying never again, it's not a part of you to be ashamed of. I used to be ashamed of that part where I'm like, but Najwa, like all this work that you do on feeling and healing, you're actually someone who would say, I'm never again going to put myself in this position. That's hypocritical. So, but the never again part isn't a part that is bad or wrong. It's a part that's trying to protect you from a pain you went through before. So what it needs from you isn't for you to sit down and say, how could I ever say that I'll never again do that? Like that just reflects such a bad part of me. What that part needs from you is to say, I understand that you're trying to protect me. That rejection was so hard. Going through that relationship was so hard. Of course you never want me to go through this again. But I want to feel love again. I want to feel connection again. I want to build a life with someone again. I want to give it a try. And maybe instead of you trying so hard to protect me, maybe you can trust that I will be more trusting of myself and my gut this time around. So then what you've done with that part of you that's saying never again is you've made it your friend, because now you've said, I know you're trying to protect me, but listen, trust me. The next time somebody speaks to me the way that that person spoke to me from my past, I'm not just going to overlook it. I'm going to stand up for myself. The next time someone hurts me in a way that someone in my past hurt me, whether they cheated on me, whether they lied to me, whatever it is, the next time someone does this, instead of me overlooking that and saying it was a one-time thing, this time you have to trust that I will say, that's not what I want in my life, and move forward. So now you've befriended the part of you that's trying to protect you instead of feeling ashamed of it.
Befriended the part that wants to protect
you instead of being like, stay away from me.
Najwa, honestly, I'm in awe at everything you're saying. I'm just like taking notes in my head as well. But okay, this is a whole healing process at the same time. And you've already answered actually my follow-up question, which is how do you really let go? And it sounds to me is that you really have to start talking to yourself and asking yourself the right questions.
That's part of being home with yourself, is you need to be. So I'll give you the most practical example of what it looks like to be home with yourself. When you are experiencing a very difficult emotion, what many of us want to do is either numb it, call someone, talk to someone, and we start panicking when nobody's answering our call. Being home with yourself is answering your own call. Instead of waiting for someone to pick up the phone and give you the relief that you want, or for someone to open the door and welcome you into their house, literally, or to welcome you into their emotional space. So figuratively, you're entering their home where they're providing that safe space for you. You sit with yourself and you say, okay, what am I feeling right now? Where is it coming from? What is it trying to tell me? That's a practical example of being home with yourself, where you are attuned to yourself. When I'm around my niece or nephew and one of them falls, before I even think, I'm with them. Mm-hmm. Or if I see someone crying, I don't even have to make a decision in my mind to have my heart break and try to help them. So I need to do that for myself. When I'm crying, I need to tend to myself instead of turning away to someone else for them to empathize for me or with me and make me feel better. And I'm not saying this to say that you're not supposed to have people in your life who are that for you, but don't depend on people who have conditioned you to be a certain way, or conditioned you to believe you have to be a certain way for me to approve of you. Don't depend on those people to provide you emotional safety. Depend on the people who will see you as you are, hear you as you are, understand you as you are, and meet you where you are.
I love that. I love that. So it's creating a space within yourself, as well as, surrounding yourself with people who you really create space for, as well as have space for as well. And I want to go into this aspect of self-independence and self-love. We see it a lot in our generation. Like, Miley Cyrus just released a new song where it's all about like, I'm independent and I don't need anybody. And I just want to know your thoughts on how does that impact dating today? Because, you can ask some Arab mamas and they'll be like, hey, this is detrimental because now everyone's marrying themselves, kind of thing. And I want to just know more about your thoughts on that.
It's really damaging to say we don't need anyone, because we do. We are born hardwired for wanting to be connected to others. There's nothing wrong with needing people. There's something wrong with needing the wrong people. There's something wrong with needing to prepare someone to be the right person to love you. There's something wrong with waiting on someone who has shown you over and over and over again that they will not see you as you are, to see you as you are. There's something wrong with needing the approval of those who need you to break parts of who you are to fit into the image they want you to be. There's something wrong with needing anything from others to make you feel like you are enough, okay, worthy of love and respect and kindness and being seen for who you are. And the reason I keep saying seen for who you are is that's one of the most powerful things is you can sit with someone and when you feel that agitation within you, like, I have to monitor how I say things, or I have to monitor what I can say, or, oh, I'm so ashamed of like even opening up about this, that tells you that person doesn't see you for who you are. So that's why I keep repeating that, is the importance of being seen by others just as we are, where we don't feel that inner need to change something about ourselves or filter something about ourselves for that person to be okay with us. Going back to what we were saying, this idea that you don't need people at all to be okay is wrong. You just need the right people who will celebrate you, who will join you in your moments of joy, who will be happy for you, who will do their absolute best to make sure that when you are having a bad day, they will provide you with a safe space to open up to them. Those are the people you need in your life. So to go from saying, because this person broke my heart, I'm going to say and make this conclusion that I don't need anybody. I can do everything for myself. That's that protective part of you that's saying, I'm never again going to put myself in a position where, you know, I'm going to be happy because somebody got me flowers or somebody took me dancing or somebody held my hand or somebody talked to me for hours. It's beautiful to have that. Just make sure you have it with the right person.
I love that. I love so many different things that you're saying right now, because you're talking about, it's not just about how you feel about a person, but how that person really makes you feel. And that's using it as a criteria.
So important. Watch, for anybody listening, okay? You're going through something right now. You have a friend, you have a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a husband, a wife, whatever. Take 10 seconds to close your eyes and ask yourself, how do I feel in the presence of this person? And just feel it. You'll know immediately. Do I feel joy? Do I feel like this person genuinely loves me and I feel so great around them? Do I feel judged by this person? Do I feel like they can't stand me? Do I feel like I have to pretend to be someone I'm not to be around them? Like, your body knows. Do you feel tense or do you feel relaxed? Your body knows how people make you feel. And you need to go to people who, like I said, celebrate you. They share in your joy. They aren't intimidated by you. Well, they could be, but they don't use that against you. You need to be around people who give you permission to genuinely be yourself and who genuinely make you feel like who you are is great. Like, I was telling a friend of mine the other day, you know, I have another friend who every time I go to her house, her mom will like open the door and she's so happy to see me. And last time I went, she opened the door and she's like, Dr. Najwa, you're so beautiful today. Like, you need people who will just be that way with you and make you feel that excitement that, you know, you're here, like you're special, but not to the extent where like people have to be there all like that all the time. Because sometimes people go through depression. Sometimes they're going through difficult times where they can't give you that. Just make sure that what they're giving you isn't the complete opposite of that, which is, you can't be yourself around me. Because if you, I have to give you an example. Examples are always the best for someone to understand. So think of a time when maybe you're sharing good news with someone that you really care about, and you're just so excited, and, you know, I got this today and I signed this, and their response is, maybe they don't even look at you and they say, oh, that's good. Like, how does that make you feel? That's telling you in a way, I'm not happy for you. And the fact that you shared this with me doesn't mean anything to me. And yes, they could be going through a hard time, but the loving, caring thing to do is to say, like, I see how happy that makes you feel, and that makes me happy for you. Or, I wish I could give you more of my energy right now, but I'm not able to. Like, many people will passive aggressively try to send you the message without saying the words, stop talking. Your achievements mean nothing to me. Your accomplishments mean nothing to me. So you have to be aware of who you're surrounding yourself with. Like, make sure that you're not just constantly around people who are like, you're amazing, you're great. You want people who are able to give you feedback, not put downs and let downs and shame and judgment. And so just be aware of who you're surrounding yourself with.
That's powerful. And I feel like it goes back to like this test, asking yourself like, hey, if I come to someone, are they going to feel happy for me, right?
Yeah.
I want to transition this conversation into talking about hope. This is a concept you talk about a lot in your book.
Yeah.
How does hope play a factor in the healing process?
Hope can be very damaging when it's towards something that has already shown you that there is no hope in it. Hope is dangerous when it's just stemming from you and your wanting for a relationship to be revived or resuscitated or to continue. A conversation I always have with a friend of mine, his name is Stefan, who I probably talk about in every interview, is you need to stop watering the dead plants in your life. Hope is continuing to water a dead plant, hoping that you're going to wake up the next morning and that plant is going to be alive. But it's dead. You use hope when maybe the plant is on the verge of wilting or wilting a little bit, but it's still alive. But when it's dead, and when we're talking about relationships, when a relationship has really shown you that it's not the right one for you, when a person has really shown you that they are not choosing you, they are not prioritizing you, they are not loyal to you, they are not respectful of you, that's a dead relationship. That's a dead plant. So when you use hope there, it's just going to waste. You're going to give of yourself and give of yourself and give of yourself, and it's going nowhere. You feel exhausted when whatever you're using to water this plant, you could be watering another relationship, not necessarily a romantic one. It could be a relationship with yourself, a relationship with a friend, a relationship with acquaintances, people who have the same interests as you. But you're putting all that energy based on the hope you have, which shows a very beautiful side of you. Don't be ashamed of it. Like, for anybody listening, if you tried for a year or 2 or even 10 years to try to make a relationship work because you had that hope, please don't be ashamed of that. You genuinely thought this could be fixed. And that just shows how committed you are to make something work. That's beautiful. But now that you have this awareness that you can't just revive something that's dead based on hope, you need to stop using hope as a driver and start using reality, clarity, logic, and, the focus on, look at all this beauty that I have. Look at everything that I have to offer that I could be offering somewhere else. I could be offering to myself. So that's my first answer about hope.
I love so many different things you just said. And I think the one thing that really resonates with me is that when the plant is really dead.
You do.
I think that's like you can answer that question for yourself. Like,
absolutely.
Right?
You can be in denial for a while, which is one of the stages of grief. So I'm saying that to say it's normal. It's healthy. It's protective to go through denial, because what happens is you have this huge wave of pain that's coming and you're just like, I don't want to feel it, so I'm not going to accept this reality. And then what happens when you say, you know what? This wave is going to come, as in the acceptance that this relationship is over. It's going to feel like I'm drowning because I don't have this person anymore. I don't have the connection I had with them anymore. I'm finally severing that bond. But you know what? I'm going to float. I'll be fine. I'm going to feel like I'm drowning for a while, but I'll be okay. That's when the denial is over and you're moving towards a next stage or a next step. So again, don't shame yourself for living in denial, because I know many people are really hard on themselves when they struggle with the ending of a relationship. It's a normal part of being a human being, and you need to use all of that, all of the time that you spent really wanting something to work and really investing in another person, to invest in yourself and to trust in yourself and in your ability to get through it.
I love how you just validated that for so many people who are listening, because it's true. So you do need to validate these emotions. It's part of being human, and it's a part of being the human experience in a relationship. There's one other aspect that I want to dive into, which is this idea of villainizing someone. Like we've always seen this, and it's this idea of like, I'm gonna use another pop culture reference, like PK and Shakira.
Fine, yeah.
So it's always like, painting your narrative with someone is a villain. I want to know your thoughts on villainizing someone after a relationship, and how much is it really that person and how much is it yourself?
I think it's really important to be able to name facts and not describe people based on facts. So you can say, this person cheated on me, or you can say, this just tells you I don't describe people in this way, but you can say, this person, let me give you another example. This person did this and this and this to manipulate me. Or you can just say, this person is manipulative. Those are two different things to say. When you describe someone as manipulative, you're saying that is how they are, that is their nature. But when you give examples and tell the truth of what they did to you, people can make their own conclusions. Like, yeah, that was manipulative, and I don't know what their intention was in doing that. Same thing with cheating. Like when I think of Shakira, I think when I heard that, I was like, that must be awful. Like, just tell her you don't want to be with her anymore and just move on to another relationship. Why do you have to overlap two relationships and convince someone that, I'm with you, I'm loyal to you, we're in a monogamous relationship, but I'm going to go behind your back and do things that genuinely break the trust that you and I built in this relationship, and then pretend as if we still have that trust. So in a way, I'm lying to you. In a way, I'm manipulating you. I'm saying things to you that I don't mean. I'm giving you the impression that we have something that we actually don't have. So does this mean that PK, is that how you say his name?
I think so.
Okay. Does this mean that PK is an overall bad person and he's just the worst and nothing about him is good? No. But the decisions he made in that relationship were not ones that maybe align with my values or your values, but I've seen many people who've said that what he did was fine. So that's their own opinion. So tell the truth of what happened and let people make their own opinions. You don't have to look at it as good person, bad person, good guy, bad guy, and say just because PK did this, he's 100% a bad human being who doesn't deserve anything good coming their way or his way. I think that's not, it's not a healthy way to look at the whole of a person. And again, it's not to excuse their behavior, but it's like, you can say that was wrong. I really believe that was wrong, but don't like bury the guy. You know what I mean? For a decision that he made for himself. At the end of the day, he has to live with what he did. Yes, there is hurt, there is pain, and I don't think that Shakira, I mean, I don't know her, but I know how hard it is to be in a position where you're treated that way, especially that you've invested, in their case, what was it, 10 years or 11 years? That's very difficult. There's a lot of pain there. And I don't believe that just focusing on describing PK as a bad guy is going to do the healing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I really hope Shakira listens to this. This is some good healing advice right there from
because
Dr.
I'm
Najwa.
sure that Shakira noticed many red flags along the way and shut her gut up. I'm pretty sure she felt certain things that weren't right, because something like this doesn't happen overnight. There's always signs.
There's always red flags.
There's always going to be red flags that later you're like, oh, yeah, okay, I see. So I'm sure a lot happened in their relationship where they both made decisions to maybe open up to each other or not open up to each other, express their needs, not express their needs, speak to each other in a certain way or not speak to each other in a certain way. And that's ultimately what's led to their relationship being what it is right now. I mean, it's very personal between them, but I think Shakira probably needs to take the time to reflect on all the red flags that she knew, but told herself, no, we're fine. He's with me. We have kids together, all that stuff. I'm sure she needs to reflect on maybe the way that she handled the situation when she first found out. Maybe she needs to reflect on, you never know, maybe she tried to make it work and it didn't work, and maybe she needs to reflect on her self-love. And
like you mentioned a lot about reflection. Reflection is a way to heal. And then you talked a lot about stating facts, and I think that's something that's very underrated and something that not a lot of people talk about, because when you're in pain, sometimes it's easier to go into describing someone versus just like, hey, what actually happened, and then reflecting, healing, and treating it as a journey.
Yeah.
Right?
So let's say you broke my heart. Okay. Right? I could say,
I would never, but
I know, but I'm just saying, let's say you broke my heart. I could describe you as an awful human being. I can use all the words in the dictionary that are bad words. I could swear when I talk about you, say you're this, you're that, you're a horrible person, you deserve this, you deserve that. Like, you are just an awful human being. Or I could say, you showed me that I was able to love someone. You showed me parts of myself that I never knew existed. You helped me through difficult times that I was going through in my life. I loved your honesty. I loved the kind of care you had for others anytime that we were out together. I loved how adventurous you were. You broke my heart. I wish that our relationship worked. I really had hope for us. But that's the reality. So look at those two different ways of approaching it. One of them is, I am telling you the ways you added to my life. I am telling you the things I loved about you, the things I loved about our relationship. And I'm telling you that, yeah, it hurt that this ended. It hurt that maybe you cheated. It hurt that maybe you changed your mind about us. It hurt that you decided to pick moving to a different country than being with me. Like, I can tell you that. And that is me genuinely being honest about my experience with you. Whereas when I turn to you're an awful human being, you're this, you're that. Well, I was with you for X number of years. So am I saying that I was with an awful human being for X number of years? Then why was I with you? Like, there's a difference in the way that we focus our energy thinking that this is going to heal me. And that's another way of building my home outside of me. I'm building my sense of who I am by saying, I am better than you because you are awful, when I don't build a home within. When I'm at home with myself, I'll say, this is how I experienced this. This is how this felt to me. And you know what? I know what I had to offer you, and that's something that you don't want. That doesn't mean anything bad about me. So look at the approach of me coming to myself and trusting my experience and trusting my heart versus bashing you to feel better about myself. And I could surround myself by all the friends who are going to tell me, you're going to find someone so much better than him. Like, he never deserved you. I just knew it since
Friends
the
can be
first
so
time I
dangerous.
met him. You can surround yourself with people who are going to say all of that, but that's focusing on the wrong thing. You need friends who will tell you, I know this hurts. And I saw the love that he had for you at the beginning, or I saw the love he had for you in this moment. And you're so valid in feeling so confused at how something like this could change. And, you need to take some time to yourself where you just remember who you are and remember all the love that you so easily give to others and the kindness that you so easily give to others. And this time around, instead of just continuing to pour it into someone else, give it to yourself and trust that you will get through this. Trust that you will find someone who will come into your life and look at every part of you. The broken parts, the ugly parts, the jealous parts, the parts that are insecure, and say, I love everything about you. Not as I blindly love you and I'll never hold you accountable, never give you feedback, but I love who you are. I love that you have gone through so much and decided that I'm going to have the courage to continue walking this path. You'll meet someone like that. You need to surround yourself with people whose messaging brings you back to yourself, to your heart, to your journey, not anything or anyone outside of you.
So positive self-talk and really approaching healing from a place of love as opposed to a place of anger and blame is one key theme. The second thing is really surrounding yourself with people who are not gonna add fuel to that negativity and that person is definitely a villain, or that person has done this and this, versus like, hey, it's okay to feel that pain, and creating that space for one another. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate hearing these things, because I think a lot of people in our generation, wherever you are, even in the world, healing and pain is something universal.
It is.
And it's something, hearing your perspective on it in 2023 with this is very refreshing and enlightening as well.
Thank you.
And I want to know your thoughts on being friends with someone who has caused you pain, whether it's a situationship, whether it's a relationship, whether you dated someone and they ghosted you, but they've caused you some sort of pain. What are your thoughts?
My personal opinion is, if someone you were in a relationship with, or in a situationship with, or in a friendship with, and they hurt you, as in they broke the bond of trust on which your relationship was standing, ask yourself, what is my purpose of being friends with them? Why do I want to continue being in contact with them? Have they expressed to me that they are sorry for what they did? Have they expressed to me that they regret hurting me in the way that they did? Have they expressed to me their willingness to work on our relationship? If not, truly ask yourself, why do I want to be friends with this person? Is it because I get relief when I talk to them? Because I think, oh, they're there. There's a hope that something will work one day. There's a hope that we will get back what we had before. What is it? What's the reason? And based on that reason, you can get your answer. My personal way of dealing with a situation like this is, I wouldn't continue having a friendship with someone who broke the bond of trust that we had and showed absolutely no, intention or initiative to fix it. Because, and I talk about this in Trust Your Heart, when that bond of trust is broken and you're restarting a friendship or a relationship, or never restart a situationship. There's no point in that. But let's say friendship, relationship, or a relationship with a person that you had a situationship with, you're starting a brand new one, because now you're building something new. Because what happens when you've built that strong foundation of trust with someone and it was broken, to come back and sit on that same foundation, there's always going to be distrust. There's always going to be confusion. There's always going to be, well, you did that to me back then. You are starting a brand new relationship with them where you make the commitment that you are not going to continue bringing up the past and what happened, because they've genuinely admitted to you what they did and how sorry they feel, and that they will never do it again, and that they acknowledge how it affected you. And because you've made a promise to yourself that you're giving this person a new chance, you are allowing them to show you again that they could be a better person with you. And obviously for themselves first, but with you. So that, to me, a relationship with someone that is led through self-trust first, that's the way to restart something with someone from your past, again, based on the conditions I just mentioned, or to start something new with someone. You walk in with 100% trust for yourself. What usually happens is we're great on our own, and then somebody walks into our life, and then we just fall off the face of the earth because we're so consumed in that relationship. And we forget what we want, what we like, how we normally spend our time, the times that we spend with our friends or with our family, or doing activities that just feed our soul. We dive so deeply into that relationship that we trust that that person's life and experience is going to offer us a better life and better experiences. So we lose ourselves. We forget who we are. If you don't know who you are, you can't trust yourself. It starts with standing strong with knowing who you are. And that's what differentiates a person who, when they're in a relationship and the first red flag pops up, they stop, they pause, they address it. They're not scared that maybe if I open up about this, that person is not going to want to be with me anymore. They're not afraid that if they express like, hey, I noticed that at X hour a day, you don't answer your phone, or your phone is off, or you blocked me on social media for an hour. Yeah, I'm not afraid that if I'm going to ask that person about it, that they might tell me, yeah, you know what, I'm interested in someone else. When I trust myself, that is just okay, so we're on the wrong page. This hurts, but I can't continue with you. This is what differentiates a person who will be quiet. And again, no shame, not shaming anybody.
No shame here.
No shame at all. If you have been that person, if you currently are that person, you're doing that because your survival mode tells you, if this person leaves, I can't survive. And that goes to older childhood stories of you that you need to go back to. What have you been conditioned to believe you need to accept in relationships? What have you, what are your fears of abandonment? So when you're able to understand what made you who you are up to this point in your life, that's what helps you know yourself, and it helps you know your triggers. It helps you know how you behave in certain contexts. Like, I know about myself that if I sense that someone I love is not feeling well towards me, I'll try harder. So I know that that's a pattern for me because I'm a people pleaser. So when I start sensing that and I become aware of it, I say, okay, you're going to fall into the pattern that you've always fallen into, which is to try extra hard, which from a trauma perspective we call fawning, for anybody who's interested. And so I tell myself, but you've made the decision that if you know you haven't made a mistake, there's no reason for this person to be speaking to you passive aggressively, to be excluding you, to be treating you this way. You're not going to try extra hard to prove your worth. And I stop. Does that mean that that's not going to happen in a day or two. No, it'll visit me, but I become aware of it and I'm like, okay, I know myself. I know what I normally do. So I'm not going to take that step to fall into that. So my knowledge of myself and what my patterns are will help me make the decision to trust my experience and my reality. And maybe I can make a decision to say, well, you know, before I assume I've done something wrong, I'm going to tell this person, you know, I noticed that something's off. Is everything okay? And if they say everything's okay, then I'm just going to believe that, because that's my job. That's the only thing I need to do. Not to try extra hard to like get them to like me or
like creating that safe space for you and how you feel about yourself with that person.
Exactly.
And everything you're saying, like I said, and I can't stress this enough, I'm in awe because you're touching on so many important themes I feel like a lot of people can relate to, and they might not have had a chance to really reflect. But what I'm gathering is that this idea of creating a sense, a home within, it's really building this self-love that you can trust your own gut, that you trust your own instinct, that you talk to yourself in a positive way, that it comes from love. And from that, you have that sense of relief where you're not dependent on other people.
Absolutely. And the most important thing is before you trust yourself, you have to know who you are. Because you and I met today. If I say right now, I blindly trust you, I'm not being honest because I don't know you. So how can I say I trust myself if I don't know myself? So it's very important to take the time to learn about yourself before you just blindly say, I trust myself. I might say, you know what? I've always been a people pleaser. It's just who I am. I can't handle like when somebody around me is upset. I'm just the kind of person who will do absolutely anything to change the way you're feeling. I used to say that a few years ago, but now I recognize that that stems from enmeshment, which is I can't separate your feelings from mine. I will absorb your feelings and try to change them. But now with the level of self-knowledge I have, I say, well, I'm like that because I spent my whole life that way. My family dynamic was that way, where we were all like, it's like our emotions were all bleeding into each other, taking the responsibility of how this person feels and that person feels and trying to change it. But now as an adult, I say it's not my responsibility to change the way that someone feels. It's my responsibility to, you know, ask myself, have I done something to make that person feel that way? And is there something I can do to help them feel better? But I'm not going to internalize what they're going through to mean something about me. So now that I have that knowledge, I trust my own understanding of the experience and what's happening right now, as opposed to I sense that you're upset and I fall to my knees trying to make you feel better, you know? So,
and I feel like a lot of people in our culture can relate to that because there is this expectation to please others.
Yes.
And I want to just, one thing I actually really liked in your book is that you asked that question, who are you really? And that having that idea of an understanding of who you are as a person is so important.
Yeah.
In the healing process, in loving yourself and entering into a new relationship. So I want to just.
Are you really?
Who are you?
Yes.
Sorry, say that again.
It is what you said. Okay, it's such a powerful question to me because every time someone asks me, how are you? I'm like, I'm good. How are you? And then when someone tells me, how are you? Really? Then I'm like, okay, I'll tell you. Like then I feel like I'm going deeper. So who are you? I'm Najwa. I've done this in my life. I've written this many books. I have this many degrees, blah, blah, blah. This is what I'm working on right now. Who are you really? It's like, who are you as a person? What makes you who you are? I'm someone who spent my whole life building my home and other people. I'm someone who's always had this feeling that I don't deserve the same kind of love and attention that other people deserve. I'm someone who spent my whole life thinking I deserve scraps of love and attention. I'm someone who spent my entire life thinking that I get people's leftovers of love and energy and attention and everything. That's my story. When I know all of that about myself, I am able to walk this life with this knowledge and to say to myself, just because that's how my life has been, it doesn't mean it has to be this way now or moving forward. I trust myself in leading myself to places where I get whole love, to places where I don't get scraps of anything. I get the whole damn table, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I really do. And it's that idea of not settling or compromising. You're not settling for less. You're getting that whole table, like you said.
Yes.
And like honestly, Najwa, the whole entire conversation today, and I can't stress this enough, I'm in awe. Like I've never been so speechless in my life. I'm just like listening, and I'm like, okay, wow, this is in a way it's enlightening, it's therapeutic, and I feel like anyone who is listening to this is gonna get so much knowledge about loving yourself, trusting yourself, and how you approach the healing process and how you approach new relationships or even re-entering friendships with people in the past. And I just want to ask you, as a way to conclude, is like, what would you say the best piece of advice you've ever received when it comes to healing?
Trust yourself. Genuinely. Anytime someone tells me that, well, the first person who told me that was my therapist. Anytime she tells me that, I kid you not, I could feel like I have pieces of me scattered all over the place because I'm feeling so confused and so I'm stepping into other people's stories and trying to understand where they're coming from, what they're going through, what's leading them to behave in this way and treat me in this way. And when she tells me, trust yourself, I feel like all of those pieces come back into me and I feel whole. And I feel like, okay, I'm going to trust myself and my experience. And this is a really powerful lesson I learned. You don't have to step out of your story into someone else's story. Stay in yours while you see theirs. So, I can say, I understand this person is mean because they've been brought up in a certain way and this is what they grew up around and blah, blah, blah. But that doesn't mean that it's okay that they're mean to me, because the way I experience that meanness in my story is that it hurts and I know I don't deserve it. So I don't have to abandon myself when I'm trying to understand another person. I can understand them, but still trust in my own experience and in my own story. So take that however you need to take it. The next time you feel that you're going through an experience with a person, whoever that person is, this is not just about relationships. It could be your parents. It could be your friends. It could be a colleague. When you feel like you're like, well, you know, they did have a bad day yesterday. They did have a bad last relationship. Their ex did this to them. They're whatever. Okay, so you're leaving your story to be in theirs. Why aren't you focusing on what you're going through as a result of the way that they're treating you? I don't care if somebody's had a horrible past experience with an ex or a boss. I don't care if somebody had parents who treated them very badly. Obviously, I care, but I'm saying to spill that pain on me, I have the right to tell you that pain is a pain that I can help you heal with or heal from. It's a pain that I can help you understand and that I can help you move forward from. It's a pain that I can sit with you for hours and help you find a therapist who's going to help you. But my way of helping you isn't going to be that I accept that you spill that pain on me and into my story.
So my last question is the inverse of that. What is the worst piece of advice you've ever received when it comes to healing?
Honestly, the worst advice I hear about healing is the advice that tells you to never open up and to never tell someone about your weaknesses or your pains or your hurts or things that have happened to you that have really impacted you in a certain way, because people say, well, they'll just end up using that against you. You might have one person or two people or 5 people or 10 people or 20 people who will hear your story and use it against you. But that doesn't mean that there isn't one person, 2 people, 5 people, 20, 100 people who will hear your story, see you truly for who you are, and never use who you are against you, and never use who you were against you, and never use your pains and vulnerabilities and weaknesses and insecurities against you. The worst thing you can do when you are trying to connect with someone, which connection, again, I'm going to repeat it, you need people. You need to feel connected with people. But connection doesn't happen when there isn't authenticity. You can't genuinely, I can't say I connect with you when I am not present fully as I am, and when you aren't present fully as you are. So the connection piece happens when I am being real and honest with you, and when I'm not just showing you the best of myself, because I need you to not just care about me or accept me or connect with me for the great things about me. I need you to connect with me and accept me and love me and respect me for everything that makes me who I am. The good and the bad. Like I said, the ugly, the shame, the everything. So don't lead a life where you are protecting yourself from the worst possible scenario that you think is the worst possible scenario, which is they're going to see me for who I am and they're going to use that against me. They're going to hate me. They're going to make me feel like something's wrong with me. They're going to really see me for who I am. Don't lead a life where you're trying so hard to protect yourself from all the bad things that could happen and accidentally shield yourself from true connection, from true love, from true relationships with people. So to be your authentic self with others, you absolutely have to be vulnerable. You absolutely have to cry. You absolutely have to, show your emotion. Some people might not show it that way, but you have to show your true heart. And if you trust yourself, again, going back to that topic of trusting yourself, if you trust yourself, you're not gonna be afraid. You could be afraid that they'll see you for who you are and leave you, but you're not going to choose them choosing you over you choosing you.
Wow.
As in over you
That's
being
powerful.
your authentic self, right? So it's scary, but it's the best kind of life you can live is the one where you lead through trusting yourself 100% and knowing that someone who's not gonna give me what I deserve or see me as I am is someone that I don't want in my life. I'm not gonna change myself so that they could be like, oh, I want her in my life.
And I feel like a lot of people, once they start entering into a relationship where they're interested in someone, they may try to fit into what they think that person wants versus I'm just going to be who I am. And when you're yourself, you attract the right people.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't chase, I attract kind of energy.
Yeah. But also the whole chasing thing. One time I wrote, I don't want you to chase me. I'm tired of running. It's the truth. As long as I'm thinking people will only want you when they're chasing you, then that means I have to continue running away from you for you to continue chasing me. That means I'm not showing you my true self, because I think that if I show you my true self, you're going to stop chasing and I'm going to feel like, hey, where are you? Why aren't you chasing me anymore? So instead of me moving in this direction and you running after me, why don't we move towards each other? It's very important that you don't just immediately open up to someone about everything about you. Take the time to get to know someone, and when you feel safe enough with them, as in they've opened a safe environment for you to talk about your insecurities, things maybe that are too sensitive in your life, maybe traumas, maybe whatever it is. Make sure that they have earned your trust and earned your willingness and openness to share those things about yourself. Because what many of us do, and that is a trauma response, oversharing is a trauma response. You are hoping that if you tell them all those things, that's going to form a bond between the two of you because they know that much about you and because they're going to really understand you for who you are. But don't give 100 when someone has only given you 1. So take little steps towards people as they take steps towards you. And again, always lead with feeling how things feel. Remember earlier when I said, take a few seconds, close your eyes. How do I feel around this person? Truly. If you feel agitated and like, oh, they make me uncomfortable and I just need to tell them one more thing so that maybe they'll change their mind about me. Again, you're stepping out of yourself, out of your home, out of the trust that you have for yourself in hopes that the way they feel about you as a result of knowing this thing about you will change and will make you feel better. So your validation is external. You don't want that. When you feel like I'm agitated and I feel like this person will judge me and make me feel small, then you can make the decision that, you know what, I'm not going to share this part of me with them because they haven't earned that right yet.
They have to earn it. It's being authentic and being true to yourself at the same time, having these incremental steps to opening up to someone when you feel safe with that person.
Yes, consciously, and like don't do this as, you know, you meet people and you just tell them everything about yourself.
First date, boom, like let's talk about my trauma.
But again, no shame because people do that sometimes, and it's because in that moment you thought that was okay. So go back to that moment and sit with yourself and say, I know what you were trying to do here. There is no judgment. Moving forward, we won't do this anymore. That's part of also trusting yourself, is that you're willing to hold past versions of you with compassion, and instead of judging them and say, I can't believe I did that, I just want to block it out of my memory. Again, you're making it an enemy.
Compassion is a main theme, I think, with this conversation, is being compassionate with yourself, approaching things with love. On that note, I think this is a perfect way to conclude this episode. Najwa, I want to thank you once again. And before we completely conclude, I actually want to give you the opportunity to tell people about your new book and about where they can find you, where they can purchase the new book, and take it away.
You can find my new book, Trust Your Heart, Lead Your Journey to Self-Discovery from Within, on Scribd. You can read it there. You can also listen to me narrating it, which I think you will love. And watch out for details in the captions where I will lead you to links and to free trials.
Najwa, thank you so much for coming once again. I really can't stress this enough. This was enlightening. I was in awe. It was therapeutic. So thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge with us today. And for people who don't know, they can follow you on Instagram at Najwa Zebian, Twitter, TikTok, the whole
Facebook,
the whole
YouTube,
thing.
Everywhere.
You guys, please don't forget to subscribe. Yalla, let's talk on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcast. We're even on Ngami and on YouTube. So, yalla, bye.